Joel McLeod, and welcome to the 905er. Since we started this podcast, the number one issue facing the 905 and Canada domestically has been housing. You and I both know that housing prices are running away from us. We are not building enough to keep up with demand. There are many thoughts on how we got here, but few solutions to the problem. Fingers are being pointed at different levels of government, with each finding ways to place the blame on each other for letting the other down. A perpetual circle of blame that does not solve the problem at hand. So who's going to actually figure this out and solve the housing crisis? Well, one city in the 905 might have finally gotten the ball rolling on solving the housing file. Last year, Mayor Carolyn Parrish was elected in a by-election to replace Bonnie Crombie as mayor of Mississauga. Upon taking office, one of the first actions she took was to create a housing task force to look at the city's bylaws, zoning, and policies to spur housing construction. 100 days later, the task force produced an actual plan that was enacted by City Council. The announcement will be in our show notes for you to look over yourself, but in broad strokes, Mississauga eliminated 50% of its development charges, revamped its zoning bylaws, and rushed to approve rental purpose-built housing projects. The result has been a mad rush to build market-driven housing in the city. Is this the solution to the housing crisis that we have been trying to seek all this time? Well, to talk about it, I've invited back to the podcast Mayor Carolyn Parrish to talk about this initiative and whether or not it is the way forward to build housing in the 905.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Carolyn Parrish from Mississauga, for coming on once again to talk about the number one issue in the province, housing. Mayor Parrish, thank you very much for coming on today.
Oh, I'm actually pleased because the more publicity we can give what we've done in Mississauga, the better.
Well, let's talk about this this housing task force plan that you brought forward. Can you just give us the kind of the high level summary of what this is? Because this episode is going on to more than just Mississauga, the entire 905. I'm not sure everyone knows exactly what you've done here.
Well, I got sworn in on June 24th, 2024. And 2 weeks later, I had my first housing task force meeting. And what we did was we invited Build Association. We invited about 30 of the best developers in the GTA that have been working in Mississauga fairly consistently, except for everything died off last year. In 2024, I think we approved about 2,600 units. So we were in a bit of a deadfall. So at the first task force meeting, we talked about what we could do internally in our planning department to make things go faster. And that was a little painful because all our planning people were there, the senior people. But it was a very good session. They talked about how we could speed things up because time is money. So we came up with a whole slew of things to do inside our building. That was about the end of the first meeting. And one of the key issues that came out of it was something that Mayor Del Duca's picked up, and it's called 3 strikes and you're in. And what happens is plans go in, they come back with 12 things that have to be fixed. They resubmit them, they come back with 26. They resubmit them and it keeps growing and it takes 8 months sometimes. So what we've told all the developers that if it's at a third submission, everything isn't cleared, book an appointment, bring in your planners with some big red pens, and we'll sit on the other side of the table with big red pens, and nobody leaves the room until they get it all straightened out. And so far, that's working really well. It's speeding up applications.
You brought forward this plan within the first 100 days, though, of assembling the task force. And to be truthful, I mean, there are other municipalities around the 905, around Ontario, that are still trying to figure out what to do. I'm wondering what made your task force get this done within 100 days when there are other municipalities still trying to figure out step one?
Heavy duty motivation. We have a lot of people, our rents are going up. We don't have a lot of rental units. We needed more units built. You probably know in Mississauga, we're pretty much built out to our boundaries, but we have land up and down the LRT. We have patches all over the place that are owned, lots in the city center. But all the, particularly condo building, has come to a dead halt. And I don't blame them, because every time you pick the newspaper up, you see that nobody's selling condo units. So we had an urgent problem, and we just decided to put our nose to the grindstone. We had 3 meetings a month apart. We came out with a report with all our recommendations. They went to City Council on January 29th, 2025. All the recommendations were passed. There were about 30 of them. Nobody said no. So we were full steam ahead on that. But I think it's the urgency. Plus, I'm not getting any younger. That's a joke. I came into this, I've been in politics a long time. And you can sit back. Municipal's my favorite. I was an MP for 13 years. But you can sit back and you can see how fast you can get stuff done at this level if you're well motivated and well supported. And I have to say the staff was fantastic. They were with me every inch of the way, and council as well. So we just made it happen.
The one thing about Mississauga is you don't have any undeveloped land to build on.
Well, yeah, we do. We don't have any that's not owned by someone.
Oh, okay.
Any greenfield.
But other municipalities in the 905, they have like a white belt that is undeveloped that they can build to the idea is to accommodate some of their housing targets that the province has passed on for them. You do not have that luxury.
That's
I
right.
guess is my point. So how does this housing drive work? Because in theory, you'd have to have somebody either sell their property to a developer to then be sold, developed into a new property or whatever have you, or renovations, or just how do you meet this housing target when you can't just say, oh, there's a plot of land, let's just make that a new condo tower or a new apartment building, or etc.
All the land, all the vacant land in Mississauga in patches, like Lakeviews, very large piece. It's all owned by somebody. The problem wasn't a lack of land. The problem was the cost. 25% of every unit is all the regulatory stuff and the fees and the everything that they have to go through. And the bank interests were high. The motivation was low. There's a glut on the market of condos, and most of these guys got used to building, and women got used to building condos. We have a couple of companies here that specialize in rental buildings, and it just got to be not lucrative or not even doable for them to build them unless we made some changes. So the first thing we did was we came in with a reduction in development fees by 50%. Now everybody says, are you crazy? Like, how can you give up, hundreds of millions of dollars? Well, if nobody's building, we're not getting any dollars. And when the commissioner came to me and he said, first thing we got to do is, and the group of developers were very pleased, is we've got to reduce the DCs 50%. And I had the same reaction. It's like, well, then what are we going to fix our roads with? And what are we going to do all this stuff with? And he said, well, you're not getting any money in right now. Last year, 2,600 units, round number. So I said, okay, let's do the numbers and see what we come up with. The other thing we suggested, and the developer suggested, was that you don't pay the DCs up front at your building permit. You pay it when you have an occupancy. So you don't have to go to the bank. You don't have to pay the high interest rates. You're not making money for the banks, who are the only guys that got through this last few years without any losses. And so we did that. And we need 3-bedroom units because we are a large immigrant city. We have a lot of families coming in and have multiple kids. So for the rental buildings, we said you pay no DCs on every 3-bedroom apartment. So these are the sorts of things we brought in that were like hard cash. And we stopped taking cash in lieu of parkland and said, if you've got space that you want to do a private park on your property, a little piece here, a little piece there, that's fine. So we cut all these fees, and everybody started to get very excited about the whole thing. But the next thing we had to do was we had to look at our zoning. We've got 70% of our city is residential. So we looked at the zoning, and we had 14 different zonings. And a lot of it's to keeping people out of your neighborhood. If you've got a single family neighborhood, you don't want duplexes, you don't want semis, you don't want townhouses. We decided, yeah, that's what we want. So we took 14 zoning categories, and we made it into two, and very simple titles. One's large lot, one's small lot. We also brought in what we call gentle infill, and you can put a backyard unit in. You can take down an old house on a big lot and put two houses in there. So we've really expanded the zoning.
You mentioned a lot there. I'm trying to just back up on the zoning front. So you're talking just two zonings in terms of just residential use. It's not like residential and commercial.
No. We didn't touch employment lands at all. Okay. Employment lands, Hazel McCallion was actually a genius. She made the formula right at the beginning as the city grew that there shall be 60% res and 40% employment lands. That's industrial, commercial, whole mix. And the reason she did that is you tack on about 10 or 20% on industrial taxes, and that helps keep the housing taxes lower. So, and it also creates jobs right here in the city, so you keep people out of their cars and off the roads and on using transit. So we've kept that balance pretty well. I think we're at about 58% res and a little bit, no, the other way around. I think we're at a little bit higher in res than we are industrial, but it's close within 1% or 2%. So we're not touching industrial lands. We're trying to preserve those and employment lands. So we concentrated on the residential, the 70% that are actually area of the ground that are residential. And we decided to get rid of all these fancy little cloistered communities. So that, let's say you move into, I shouldn't use the name Lauren Park, but let's use it because they've got a lot of good sized lots and nice houses. And if you want to move in there now, you can tear a house down and turn it into 2 houses, into a semi or whatever it'll take, or even a 4-plex in some areas. So we got rid of all those restrictions. We have no more restrictive zoning in Mississauga.
What's been the feedback from people? Because typically when you have that number of residential zoning bylaws that are, no duplex, no over a certain height, et cetera, et cetera. If you're going to do away with that, I can picture you're going to upset a number of people because those were put in for a reason. What has been the feedback from people? Are you getting a lot of blowback from neighborhood associations, from everyday taxpayers? What are you hearing on the ground?
Well, what you're hearing, especially when you're bringing in a 35-story high-rise building where a plaza used to be. It's actually our limit on plaza lots is 25 stories. We have a lot of those big sprawling malls here. And then you get the people that are bordering the area. First of all, their argument is they're losing some stores. And what we've tried to do with those is say, keep the stores in the base of the buildings and put res above it. But you always get people, and it's just human nature. If something weird is going to happen on your street or within your neighborhood, you don't want it to happen. You just want things to be the way they always were. Where you're starting to get some cooperation from people who normally would be resistant is people who are grandparents, because their grandkids are moving out of town. They can't get housing here at all. They can't even get rental housing. So they're moving out of town and away from Mississauga where they grew up, and they want to live there. So we're starting to get more cooperation that way. But I would say every single big change like that comes in, you get a huge pushback. I was at an AGM of a ratepayer group last week, and people were angry because we were putting in 3 apartment buildings on a big empty lot with a bit of a plaza in it. And they liked it the way it was. They didn't want it changed. But just going to have to say, I'm sorry, but we're doing it. And once it gets in there, some of these things, once they get in, people settle down or they move out.
Well, I guess that's the thing, is that my sense around the 905 in other communities is there's that fear of taxpayer uprising, that you say, okay, we're going to come in and start building high-rise units in a certain neighborhood. Well, it changes the character, it ruins the nature. I grew up here. You're ruining our city. Is what goes.
But we're not putting high-rise in the middle of a residential area. What we're doing, we're locating our high-rise close to transit areas. Right. We are letting them redevelop malls because people are shopping through Amazon. They're shopping through all kinds of online things, and some of the stores are dying down a bit. So you're not doing anything dramatic. You still have to go through a process where you can't put a high-rise building in the middle of a neighborhood of single family houses. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So you're looking at, that's an extreme. But yeah, people get concerned, even if it's 3 blocks from where they live, and suddenly they're used to having a plaza there, and then there's 25-story apartments going in. They're going to be upset.
What I remember reading in your the press release, you had mentioned that there's about 2,000. There was about 2,000 new units approved.
2,600 last year, around.
Right. And what number are you at now?
Right now, as of the beginning or the middle of May, we're at 7,975 under building permit review. That's incredible. That's incredible.
What's your expected estimate of still to come? From what you've heard from developers and
well, what we did was we sent a letter out and then the task force still meets on occasion. We met April 29th and had Minister Flack there, the new housing minister. So we touch base now every couple of months just to see how things are progressing. But we sent letters out to them once all the different changes were passed and asked for their estimates and their locations. And we had about 13,000 saying they're getting ready. Of those, we've got almost with 7,975 in some part of the process. They're either getting land use approvals, there's 2,984, site plan approvals, 3,846, building permits issued, 1,145. And at this point, if we get the 12,000 units, it's going to cost us over $100 million of loss, but we're still going to get $100 million in. So if we hadn't done this, we wouldn't be getting any money in, and we wouldn't be getting anything built. And a lot of that's rental. A lot of it's rental.
Well, okay. On that question, I have actually perfect 2 questions lined up for you. One is, with the development fees cut back 50%, how are you planning to budget for that shortfall? Are you just going to weather it and wait for property taxes to make that up over the long term, or is the province going to step in and subsidize? How are you guys going to make that?
None of the above. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things we're very lucky is we're pretty much built out, as we talked about. So we have our community centers in place. We have the libraries in place. We have all those things in place that make a city livable. We also have pretty good road structure. We have pretty good, all our pipes and things have been refreshed lately. So our infrastructure is in good shape. So we can weather it out, as you said. We can let it go for a while. But again, I'm saying, if we didn't reduce them, we'd be in worse shape, because we wouldn't be getting any applications in, and we wouldn't be getting any DCs in. Now, we did get actually 44 million from the federal government, 2 drops. We're really sorry Nathaniel Erskine-Smith didn't keep the housing portfolio, because when we called him, I called him on a Saturday night. I got his cell phone from another MP out here. And I explained to him what we've done. And I said, we're in line for 112 million over certain stages. We got 1 check already. Is there any way you can speed up the second check? And he was out a week later and gave it to us, another 22 million. So we're getting money that way. People are talking that the province is going to do some subsidies as well. They're mostly putting their money into infrastructure, which doesn't help us. They're putting it into water, wastewater pipes, so that you can expand places like Caledon and put subdivisions in. But that's okay. I mean, we're in really good shape. The city's in good shape, and we can weather this storm. And if you hear snoring, that's my bulldog. She's right behind me. You didn't hear it? Good.
Not so far, but make sure you give her a good scratch behind the ears for me. The priority, from the material that you put out, the priority that you seem to be focusing on is rental purpose built housing. That goes to the top of the list to get that done. I'm wondering if there's a plan to build some kind of subsidized housing for low income people or unhoused people, to get them off the streets, or to get them kind of stable and plugged back into the social pipeline, so to speak. I haven't heard anything of that so far. I'm wondering, are the plans that coming down to address that?
Two of the developers, one was Indwell, who do that type of housing. Another was Starlight. They were both on our committee. We gave out $44 million to 8 different developers quite recently, if they are willing to build units that are below market value. Some deeply below market value, and some somewhat below market value. And they have to guarantee those rents for 25 years. So we have had a couple projects come in, actually 8 of them. So we're doing that as well, because we had groups on the task force that were very aware of that, and they also knew what we were doing. The other thing we did was we went to the region, which is a little tough to deal with because they give DCs as well, and they're higher than ours. We're trying to get them to reduce them to 50%, and Brampton and Caledon so far aren't interested. But what we did at the region was we brought in another class of taxation. So if it's a purpose-built rental building, they get 35% reduction in their property tax for 35 years. So we passed that. It comes in January 1st, 2026. And a lot of the rental guys are very excited about that because they'll get it as of that date, right through when they're building and many years after. So no, we're very concerned about both what we call a market rent and market housing, and we're very concerned about people who need the subsidized stuff.
But there are no plans for like a Peel Regional Housing Corporation owning units or a facility or a building or anything.
Oh, they already do. Peel Region owns a lot. We have Peel Housing, and they own quite a few units. They own townhouses. They own some high-rise buildings, but mostly multi-unit, lower-rise buildings. And they've got lots of plans to expand, but that's their responsibility. If they do, then we will treat them better even than we're treating everybody else when they put applications in. Applications, as you saw in the recent bills that went through the province, senior housing, for example, senior units have no DCs on them. And we honor that. We've been doing that for quite a while.
How sustainable do you see this plan going? Because, I guess that people are wondering, okay, you can weather it now, but what happens when you can't, when that rainy day happens, as it always happens, no matter the best laid plans and everything, something happens that you're not foreseeing, or you realize you've got to fix this. How I know the urgency is to build housing, but I guess my question is this sustainable over the long run? Or is this just a stopgap measure to get the housing built now and you'll figure out the rest later?
Well, it's a supercharge. It's a shot of high energy octane, but it's in place right now on our books because we're not like the feds or the province. We can't build in legislation that lasts forever. What we do, we can only commit one council session to it. So right now, anything that's got a building permit, any building that's got a permit by November of 2026, which is right after the next municipal election, that's all we can guarantee. Now, if I win again, when I win again, and if the council doesn't change dramatically, then we'll continue it until the slump is over. And we won't be building any new community centers because we don't really need to. We will be just very cautious with our infrastructure money. But again, I keep reminding people, if we didn't do this, we'd be getting zero in. If on this batch that's going through right now, it's 100 million is the 50%. And we're quite happy with that.
I guess if we're going to keep going, sorry, my mind's working faster than my mouth is, and I'm having trouble.
That happens to me a lot.
A theme that I keep coming across on this podcast is that I think the 905 is in a transition period. All of our, whether it's Mississauga, Brampton, Burlington, Hamilton, we're all in this transition. We're turning into something that's not Toronto, but we're no longer just a quiet suburban commuter, where people park their cars to keep their stuff, but we all go work in Toronto.
Thank goodness.
Well, and this is on you now as mayor. What's your vision of Mississauga now that you're trying to get housing built? You're trying to presumably keep younger families in Mississauga to start families, generational speaking, right? What's your vision for Mississauga outside of the rest of your term or even another term? Like what is that when people look back on Carolyn Parrish's tenure as mayor of Mississauga, that you say I did that. That's because of me, and hopefully it's for the best.
Well, one of the things I did do was we are one of the few large cities, I believe, in Canada that doesn't have a hospice for people who are dying or for their families to give them comfort. And the hospice group we've got right now, we're able to collect through donations $16 million. Mm-hmm. And they came to us and they said, for the other 16 million to start building, we need to borrow and we need you to countersign at the bank for us. And I asked them what the rate of interest was. I can't remember what they said, but it was pretty high. And so I checked with our lawyers. I said, can't they borrow from us? And we do the borrowing and pay 3.2% interest. And we give them the money and they pay us back and then we pay ours back. We make no money on it. So that is just been done. It went through council on Wednesday. The other thing is we did do a donation or a pledge to the new Trillium Hospital, which is going to be massive. It's going to be the largest teaching hospital in Canada. And we pledged 390 million. And what we have right now on our tax base is a 1% levy that's been on for 3 years. It's got 2 more years to go to refresh all our fire departments. When that comes off, the 1% will go on for the hospital, and we've got many years to pay that. So when that hospital's built, I'll have a big smile on my face. It's going to be the best one in Canada. Other things, I'm really looking hard. We've already asked for requests for interest on our city center. It's drab. I don't know if you live here, if you've ever gone.
I've been. I'll keep the opinions to yourself. I don't want to upset.
It's boring. It's boring. We've got just all fast food stores in the city center. So we had 5 different developers give us their ideas. 2 of them are to tear down the Living Arts Center and start from scratch. Yes, and build a conference center and a hotel and some nice restaurants and a concert hall. And we've got 6 acres in the middle of the city, but it was built in a crazy way. It's 35 years old. They built it on an angle through the 6 acres, so it made the 2 pieces on either side useless. So if we tear it down, we straighten it out, and we do it, make it walkable, we've got lots of room there. And also, downtown land is worth about 50 million an acre right now. We also own 2 pieces that Hazel preserved when we got the land for Sheridan College years ago. She bought extra land, so we've got a 3-acre piece and a 2-acre piece, and they're worth 50 million an acre. So we've got the money to transform the downtown should we get it through council and they all want to take the plunge and do it the way 2 of the developers proposed, which was tear the old thing down. It needs about 120 million in repairs right now. So that's a big one for me because I really want us to have a downtown that's real for a good city. And so that's a big deal for me. We also have a huge Celebration Square, and we have festivals there booked right from the middle of April to the end of October. And we have to turn about 50% of them away because we just have that one space. So we're now looking at a soccer stadium in the downtown on some of the land that MTO owns and is also owned by developers, and put an 8,500 seat soccer stadium in there. And then you can use the grounds because it won't be covered, and we can double all our festivals and just make the downtown more exciting.
The one thing I found unique about Mississauga, but also a bit of its detriment, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the way back when Mississauga was first created, the amalgamation, you had Streetsville, Port Credit, Cooksville, and kind of the town center, and they both maintain their unique flavor, their character, if you will. And that's part of the charm of Mississauga. Like Streetsville is this kind of quiet, quaint, old town feel. Port Credit is very nice and vibrant, and you have the downtown, etc. But at the same time, they're very separate from each other. They're very distinct. And I've always pondered, how does a city kind of unify those neighborhoods into one Mississauga character? Because that's something that I've never heard. I've heard Mississauga say, "Oh no, I'm from Port Credit, I'm from Streetsville, I'm from Cooksville," and they seem to kind of prioritize that over being, "I'm from Mississauga." And I'm just, that's
a really good question, because my previous answer is we make the city center very vibrant, so people leave Streetsville and they come into city center. I'm the one years ago, much against Hazel's better judgment, brought in fireworks for Canada Day, massive fireworks at the city center. And now it's morphed out. Streetsville has theirs, Port Credit has theirs. Port Credit's actually doing it from a barge in Lake Ontario this year, so it should be pretty exciting because they want to look at, in the future, doing a Benson and Hedges competition down there. So I don't know if you remember that. You're probably not.
I do very well.
But I think what we'd like to preserve is some of the quaint shopping areas and so forth. For example, in Streetsville, when the developers come in with 25-story buildings, they get turned down because it's a heritage district, and they've got, if you go down into parts of Port Credit, gorgeous, beautiful heritage houses, big whole neighborhoods full of them. So it's important to preserve that, but it's also important to make the center of the city a draw. So they leave their little town when they feel like it. They come down to the theater, and they come to the restaurants, and they come to their folks come into the hotel, and we become a convention center, which brings other people in. It's good for tourism. I think it's a balance because nobody wants to lose those places, and nobody wants to lose the flavor of them. And they put a lot of, street festivals on and a lot of stuff. So people move around here. As a matter of fact, the complaint from Port Credit is too darn many cars on the side streets because there's something going on down there all the time. So, but I still think if we can really make the city center, like, I can't think of anything in the city center that's exciting. It's been a pet peeve of mine for years. I've lived here 50 years in this same house. And I want to do something exciting there. So it has a brand and a name, and people come and then they say, yeah, I'm from Mississauga.
Well, time will tell, and we'll see how that unfolds. I don't want to keep you too much longer, Mayor Parrish, but thank you very much for coming on today to talk about this. I look forward to seeing how this unfolds over the next few years and see if you finally crack the housing dilemma that has plagued the 905 and Ontario at large for the last few years. So best of luck to you and to the council and to the good people of Mississauga.
And thank you very much, Joel. Thanks for taking the time and patiently listening.